Today I'm going to be informing you about the abuse that went on at USA Gymnastics for over 3 decades. For years, little girls across the world, including me, looked up to the women of USA Gymnastics, and rightfully so, as they simultaneously trained for the Olympics and went through emotional, physical, and sexual abuse to get there. Years of investigation prove that USA Gymnastics will do anything to win, including turning a blind eye to children pleading for a savior from emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. This all started at Karolyi Ranch, a breeding ground for abuse on all 3 counts in the middle of nowhere in Texas. Here, this was a perfect place for the Karolyis to emotionally and physically abuse the young women and for sexual predator Larry Nassar to sexually abuse the girls. Although Marta and Bella Karolyi, the coaches, were never considered abusers in their homeland of Romania. There, they coached many gymnasts along with Nadia Comaneci, a 14-year-old who was the first woman to reach a perfect 10 score at the Olympics. At the age of only 14, Nadia started a movement along with other women around the world that went from having women train to little girls train. And the women were able to speak out against what was happening and what was wrong, but now that they were little girls, they were afraid to speak out against their abusers. This created a fear culture at the USA Gymnastics Training Center, Karolyi Ranch. And although many women were left to speak out against what happened, few women did. Holly Yan reports all the abuse that went on at Karolyi Ranch. However, in the movie Athlete A on Netflix, many women shared their stories of the abuse. 2 women, however, stuck out specifically to me. One woman, Jamie Dancher, told her experience of how coaches belittled her and made her feel bad about her weight, although she was clearly physically fit to perform gymnastics. Although, when Jamie came down with influenza B and lost 13 pounds, instead of asking her if she was okay, the coaches insisted that she do anything to keep the weight off. And at that moment, Jamie remembers thinking that the association did not care about her at all, but instead the money and medals that came with her success. Another woman, Amanda Tomashow, went as far as to physically hurt herself to escape the abuse. Amanda went into her bathroom, laid down water on the floor to make it look like she slipped, and bashed her head into the bathtub until she gave herself a serious head injury, where she was life-flighted by helicopter to the nearest hospital, 70 miles away from the ranch. And when she returned to practice the next day, instead of asking her if she was okay again, Marta Karolyi made an example of Amanda in front of all of the other girls, saying, "Look at Amanda. Even after she fell off the top bunk, she still managed to make it to practice." This was a blatant lie, used to make the other girls work harder, in an environment that Amanda was willing to seriously injure herself to escape. But who would let the girls train in conditions such as these? Those choices were left up to none other than Larry Nassar, sexual predator and abuser of little girls. In his 29 years of work through USA Gymnastics, Nassar abused over 200 women that we know of. And Jonathan LaPook describes the encounters of his abuse. However, he also states that over 100 women testified against Nassar in his court case. Although this continued to happen because Nassar and the Karolyis helped each other out. The Karolyis gave Nassar a secluded location to abuse little girls, and in return, Nassar let the girls train injured for the Karolyis. Jennifer Earle, a reporter for Fox News, describes Michaela Maroney's abuse unlike any other from Nassar. Although she had been molested countless times before by Nassar, this one was unlike any other. Michaela Maroney was drugged by Nassar and remembers waking up in a hotel room in Tokyo where she thought she was going to die in the hands of Nassar. And the next day, when she brought it up with coach and fellow teammates, John Gooder although later claims that he does not remember the conversation. However, somehow, USA Gymnastics heard word of Michaela's abuse report, and USA Gymnastics President Steve Penny made Michaela Maroney sign a non-disclosure agreement to make sure that she never spoke out about the abuse again. And although Michaela and her infamous displeased face as she placed second on silver vault at the 2012 London Olympics, we can now assume that her displeased look was not a face of that she was mad about her placement, but rather a face of sadness that she gave up her entire life and her innocence to a company that only cared about the money and medals. In conclusion, USA Gymnastics and its athletes were idolized by Americans and people across the world. However, over 3 decades, we now learn that this power turned the victors into victims of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. And although it's hard to speak about, it even makes me emotional discussing it with you today, we must, because this was one situation that happened on a large scale that we all know about, but situations such as these are happening every day around us. And if we educate ourselves on something that happened, we can stop this from ever happening again.